This is Commissioner Stites. Are you able to hear me?
We're able to hear you.
Thank you, ma'am.
We're live on YouTube and UGTV. Can we get a mic check from the fifth floor conference room, please?
Mic check. Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. We are at the hour, and I'm going to call this meeting to order. I ask the clerk to announce the meeting and roll call, please.
Good evening. You are hereby notified that I have called a special session of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, to be conducted in a hybrid format on Thursday, May 19, 2022 at 5 p.m. for a presentation from the Infrastructure Subcommittee and discussion regarding capital maintenance and improvement projects. Roll call. Townsend? Here. McKiernan, we have an absence memo. Ramirez?
Here.
Johnson?
Here.
Kane? Markley?
Here.
Stites?
Here.
Davis?
Here.
Bynum? Here. Burrows?
Here.
Garner?
Here. Thank you, clerk. Tonight we'll have a presentation from the Infrastructure Subcommittee and a discussion regarding capital maintenance and improvement projects, which is CMIP. I'll turn it over to our administrator to introduce the presenters for the Infrastructure Subcommittee presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Cheryl Harrison Lee, Interim County Administrator. Good evening, members of the commission. Equally as important in doing the budget and looking at the operational component is looking at the capital component. We all know that if you're going to have economic development opportunities, we must have infrastructure that matches those opportunities or allows us to continue to keep the city growing and on the move. Tonight, we're going to be talking about the needs, some of the funding shortfalls, and proposed projects. I'll turn it over to Jeff Fisher, our Public Works Director, to start that presentation and to introduce the team that will be presenting tonight.
Thank you. As you know, summer of 2021, the mayor commissioned 3 subcommittees around infrastructure. Identified commissioners that would serve on each of those committees, and then to work with Public Works, Parks and Rec, Finance, Budget, and now I've met nearly 30 times since then. And that work has been outlined in a document that has key outcomes and strategies that the committees felt were important for the short term and the long term. And so the committee chairs are here tonight to present their findings and highlight that document. I'll turn it over to the chairs.
Thank you, Jeff. I'll start out tonight. As Jeff has mentioned, they've met almost 30 times since the time that this started last August. I want to appreciate Jeff and Angel also for the work that you all have done to put this to bring this information to us. As they mentioned, and I really hope the public sees this presentation because it's so vital for the for our city and our county to move forward. They broke us up into 3 subcommittees. First is streets, bridges, and streetlights. The next one is parks, recreation, and facilities. And the third one is stormwater and wastewater. I will give you this caveat. Tonight, we're not going to really deal with stormwater and wastewater because, as we all know, this is an issue that has taken on its own life, and it would really overshadow some of the things I think we want to present tonight. So just want to make sure everybody understood that. So we see the needs by category, and we have 5 particular areas that we need to figure out how we're going to fund through the general fund. If you just look at the first one, bridges, the need is $14 million a year. And then the have lets us know that we're not even at $500,000 a year. Now, that number is not going to match what you see in the Cmyp report later, because that have is an annual average. It's an annual average of $476,000. So you can tell we are a little over $13.5 million short of the actual need just for bridges. Streets, you can look at it and see 20 million is the need, and 5.7 right now is what we have. So that is indicative of all of the 5 categories, the things that we need to keep our community growing that are demanded by our budget. We are woefully short in most of those. The next slide tells us, and I really like this particular one, the enterprise needs. The first slide is what it ought to look like. We have a need of $36 million, and we have a revenue stream of $36 million. So it pays for itself. When you go on to others, such as stormwater, we only have half of what we need. So this is an ongoing theme that we're going to see throughout this presentation by my colleagues. The next slide tells outcomes, outputs, and strategies. So as we look at those 3, I will first of all emphasize the middle one, outputs. If you notice the last bullet point, it says without outcomes, there is no need for outputs. So I'm not going to really focus on that, but we want to focus on the outcomes. And those are the difference made by the outputs. So they're all tied together. Something that follows a result or a consequence. And so we see these things all throughout our cities. As we look at potholes, they are an outcome of the fact that we have not had enough money to be able to take care of those things. Strategies are our plan or methodology that creates support and advantages for outcome. I think that the thing that I want to emphasize with this is that we have to make sure that we are intentional about what we do, about how we do it, and how we fund it. We need to be intentional about every single strategy that we put forth as a commission. Next slide. I'm going to have a kind of a theme here to look at the average. These are outcome examples, and these are not the actual numbers, and I want to put that out there up front. But an example of outcomes, if you look at the first one, the average PCI of 65 by 2030, that is an example of an outcome. That's not the actual example, but that is something that we need to be looking forward to putting out there. The thing that strikes me the most is the last outcome, and I think that is relevant to right now and where we're going. The community satisfaction has to increase. We want the community to continue to say Wyandotte County is a place that we want to live. Wyandotte County is a place we want to raise our families. As we go to the next slide, I'll point out pothole patchers in operation. Many of us did the tour with Jeff and Dave. Do you all remember that? I think in retrospect that Jeff and Dave put us on that school bus on purpose, because for the first time in my life, I felt every single pothole from 7th Street all the way out to 110th Street. And so that renewed and it sparked an appreciation for the PCI. And so we that's an example of an output, new pothole patchers in operation. And in my church, we would say amen to that. As we look at strategies, I want to, juxtapose the first item with the third item. We want to identify the most used street assets as juxtaposed as to deprioritize low traffic volume streets. I think I heard Jeff, and you can correct me on this. I think I heard you say that, or someone in your staff said that in Wyandotte County, we have more streets per some measurement than our neighboring counties. And that lets us know that there are probably some streets that don't need to be activated or inactive right now, or active right now. So we need to make sure that we are removing the things that are not high priority, the things, for instance, unnecessary street lights, unnecessary bridges are things that could be strategies as we move forward. I think that stops. That concludes my portion, and I'm going to pass it to Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. We're going to take you into the three areas again, two of the three, by starting off with this vision statement, sustainable community of choice, free from the threats and burdens of failing and unnecessary infrastructure. That is that's it in a nutshell. That is the balance of the rest of what we bring you tonight. And it's a guiding statement for what we ask all of us as the elected body together to be thinking about from here on out, especially during this budget cycle. So next, please. The area that I chaired was streets, bridges, street lights, and sidewalks. So those are the areas that I'll be walking you through on the slides. You have this document, which is the long version of what we're bringing you tonight. It's 20 some odd pages of typed material. And the reason I hope you'll spend some time with this document is because this is the capture of all the work that was conducted in the almost 30 meetings that we all spent together. So before I go on, I just want to say thank you to all the committees, but specifically for my committee, Commissioner McKiernan, Commissioner Townsend and Stites, and mostly thank you to our public works staff, parks, and our finance folks. This was an intense and sustained series of conversations. And to the staff, I'm most grateful probably not only for the expertise that you bring to your work, but for agreeing to the open and honest space in which we did that work. And the dedication that you showed every time we had a meeting. So with that, we'll start with streets. This is a real indicator, increase our 2018 average pavement condition index rating of 56 to an average of 65 for our entire road network by 2045. So it's a 20-year goal. And we're only trying to move up 9 points. It just shows you what a heavy lift it is. It shows you how much work there is to do. So the rationale and the community expectation, you'll begin to see that that's quite repetitive, but a healthy transportation network requires a functional and safe street, bridge, and stormwater system. street conditions in KCK are safer and smoother and promote economic vitality and community welfare. The expectation of this community as borne out over and over and over again, as you can see here, is that they ranked street maintenance as their top priority 1, 2, 3, 4 times over 6 years. In 22, the most recent one that we just saw a few weeks ago, this priority is 31% higher than the next highest priority. And the primary strategy here is an infusion of dollars to prevent our pavement condition index from further decline. We must increase the budget from the current average 5.7 million to an additional 20 million within just a few short years. So next, please. And then in the bridges category, again, starting with the outcome. So we want a bridge sufficiency index rating according to the following by 2040. And we're saying 40% of our structures are within a sufficiency index range of 75 to 100, which we call good. Now, Mr. Fisher, before we came to the meeting, I believe you may have indicated to me that we're at that goal right now.
That's correct.
So maintenance is critical. We want 20% of our structures between the range of 50 to 74 in the fair category, 20% in the poor category, and we certainly want less than 5% in the replace category. So again, a healthy transportation network requires a functional and safe street, bridge, and stormwater system. The community expectation with this item as well is the same. Street maintenance is the top priority of our community survey respondents, 31% higher than the next highest priority. And how do we get there? We get there with budget dollars. At least we believe that is the number one strategy. And that is the less than 500, less than $500,000 that we currently budget to this outcome obviously needs to be increased dramatically by 2025. And we did want to point out that in the big document, we have 270 bridges that we are in charge of, and they don't include bridges like I-70. That's not unified government work to do. But it does include bridges like the Kansas Avenue Bridge. So you can see the specifics and the documentation of these bridges that we speak of within the bigger document. Next. Again, we do have actionable plans for replacement or retirement of major bridges when they have a sufficiency index rating that reaches 60. Same rationale, same community expectation. The strategy here is that we can create among our public works experts a bridge preventative maintenance program and repair line item within our budget. Next. In the streetlights category, our streetlight system is fully modernized. It provides adequate lighting, including, and this is no small thing to me and probably not you either, energy reduction and performance controls throughout Kansas City, Kansas by the year 2030. The rationale for streetlights is pretty straightforward, but I would put forward to you that it hits on a couple of main points. Pedestrian, motorist, and neighborhood safety perceptions increase, illegal dumping decreases, community pride increases. Again, the community expectation, we look to the survey. And the survey says 24% of respondents are very satisfied or satisfied. So that tells you that there's easily plenty of work to do around streetlights. And then our strategy that we're putting forward is that the unified government assumes the costs management and oversight. And I'll stop there to say that I believe we've all seen, and if not, I apologize. I know our committee and Public Works and Safety Standing Committee have seen several presentations now around, the possibility of converting all of our street lights to LED lighting, the cost of that, and the potential ways that we might pay for it, including the fact that our staff is working diligently to try to find some of these infrastructure dollars that could possibly be used for that. And I will assure you, they're just looking high and low at any possible remedy for helping to find a pay source for this, because it's a great, great idea. And then moving on to number 5, sidewalks. Again, we're increasing an average condition rating for sidewalks to an acceptable level by 2030. And we say that because if you look at the strategy is we're going to develop a rating system, and we know how to do that because we've done it in other arenas. So again, pedestrian and motorist safety. And so again, you have the two kind of key areas, the safety and the community health. It is not scientific in any way to be able to draw the conclusion that existing sidewalks and new sidewalks contribute to the health outcomes that are so desperately and sorely needed for this community. Again, 18% of our community survey respondents are very satisfied or satisfied. We can do better than that. So again, the strategy is that we're going to develop a rating system, and we're going to track it, the needs and the progress by 2023. That is a strategy that we can achieve. And I'm going to hand it to Commissioner Ramirez for his portion. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. As Commissioner Bynum said, thank you to staff for wanting to have this open and honest conversation with us. And I also want to thank the commissioners that were part of the conversation, Commissioner Kane, Commissioner Davis, and Commissioner Markley, who were on the subcommittee. We did good work, had many good conversations. So for Parks and Recreation, this pertains to recreational services and programming. The main outcome is increased community interest and participation by tailoring recreation and programs to the surrounding community's needs. This is a quote unquote right sizing recreational programming and services to the community. The recreational needs of Piper aren't the same as the recreational needs of Argentine. So making sure what program we do fits that community, fits that neighborhood. The community expectation based off of our Parks Master Plan is that continuous improvement and accessibility of recreational services and programming. And the primary strategy is hire a consultant with a specialization in gathering information about community center utilization. We can actually start the process of checking that off. Our Parks Department and under the Director, Angel Obert, and staff have already hired a consultant to do a study of our community centers and look at the utilization of those. And they reported back to us earlier in the week with preliminary information and data. And two things that I want to just briefly mention that came from that report was that there's some overlap of services and programming with our community centers. And a possible recommendation that they may bring forward to us is maybe looking at our community centers and doing quote unquote specialization, maybe have a community center that's more sports oriented, one that's more nature centered, or one that is more arts and crafts oriented. But again, making sure that those orientated services are what the community in that area wants. And the other one, and this is based off the NRPA, which is the National Recreation and Parks Association. Here in Wyandotte County, based on their standards, we do not have a recreation center. All that we have is a community, all that we have are community centers. And it's based off the square footage of the building and the particular programming that is in the building. So in Wyandotte County, we can't say we have a recreation center based on those standards. We don't. They're all just community centers. This study is continuous and it's going to be going on. They're going to continue working with staff, having conversation with staff, with leadership, with the governing body, and with the community, and come to us with recommendations of how we can move forward from there. I am happy that Angel and her team have brought this study to us because I think this is going to supplement the Parks Master Plan and give us a clear way forward of what we can do for our community centers and how we can, well, we all know our citizens, our constituents, they want more programming. This is going to help us get there. Next. The next one is facilities. We all know here at the Unified Government, we have many facilities that house many of our departments throughout the city and throughout the county. The main outcome from this is create an ownership culture and introduce long-term cost savings by establishing a Buildings and Logistics Internal Services Fund. I'm going to ask Jeff Miles over in Fleet Services to describe briefly to the community and to the governing body what an ISF is and how it has helped Fleet Services.
Thank you, Commissioner. Jeff Miles, Fleet Manager. Yes, we implemented the Internal Service Fund the first year in 2020. 2021. We're in our second year now with the assistance of budget. The outcome that we were after is to hold the departments as well as ourselves and Fleet Services much more accountable, look at efficiencies, look at overlaps, consolidate a lot of the equipment. So internal service funds, we try to operate more as a business, obviously without a profit margin, true cost. So when we have that true cost of operation for a department, that allows us to give budget true cost of what the equipment and vehicles cost that department and the services that we're supplying the community, as well as operational benefits as well. By shifting to a business model, it shifts that burden back onto the department to where they really focus in on their fleet of equipment. And I'm happy to say we've reduced, just in 1 year, we've reduced our fleet size by over 100 pieces of equipment as well as vehicles. And we're hope to see the same thing with the facilities outcomes as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And the rationale for this is the true cost of providing services across all asset categories is not known. We don't know. And I found out through our facilities, when we budget or create buildings, we really do not budget enough for O&M over the years. And so that is why we have such a backlog of deferred maintenance. Community expectation, this is something we're going to see over and over. Only 33% of the respondents to our survey report being satisfied with the maintenance of city buildings. That's a significant amount. That means 33% of our community doesn't like what they see when they come to a city building to get the services and programming that we provide. A primary strategy to help with this, with the ISF, is to identify and track all annual costs associated with providing Buildings and Logistics' internal services. Next. This slide pertains to parks facilities. The main outcome is increase the quality, usefulness, and sustainability of unified government facilities and community centers. Again, the rationale, as always, is to improve and to continue that improvement in accessibility for parks facilities and programming. Again, community expectations, only 33% being satisfied with the maintenance of city buildings. And the primary strategy of this is create a partner for space program that generates revenue and incubates small businesses. An example of this could be Boys and Girls Club or YMCA, we could create a partnership where they could provide after school programming, summer programming for the students. But again, there's a caveat to that. Our community centers need to be brought up to code before we can apply for licensing with the Kansas Department of Health and Environment to be able to create those partnerships. So there is it's twofold. We can create those partnerships, but first we need to get our house in order so that we can create those partnerships. Next. And this last slide is pertaining to just our parks. The outcome is increase the quality and usefulness of unified government parks. We have many, many parks around this community, and I know Commissioner Kane has continuously advocated for creating one in his district, and we will get you one.
Today?
No, not yet.
Can I have a park out in Piper? Can I? There you go.
And again, community expectation, continuous improvement and accessibility. The primary strategy for this came from, I believe, from our Parks Director, Angel Obert, is to benchmark similar cities and how their park systems are structured to serve their communities. We have KCMO, Overland Park, Shawnee, many municipalities around us who have amazing recreational services and recreational facilities. And just go around and see what they have, what they provide for their community, but also keeping in mind what we bring over has to fit into what our community wants. That's number one for Parks and Recreation, and for all that we've been working as the subcommittees, is making sure what we do fits the community and what the community wants. And I will turn this back over to Commissioner Johnson.
All right. I found that my audiences tend to perk up when I say these three words, in my closing, in our closing. Here are our key points, actually 5 of them. I'm appreciative of the fact that this commission has increasingly become a data-driven commission. We like to make decisions based on what the numbers tell us. And so I think that is something that we're wanting to make sure we're doing. Again, we want to make sure that we are leaning in on the community surveys, because those are the things that drive the needs that we emphasize in the budget based on what our community wants. This is a living document. It'll change as it should over time. And so, you know, there's very few things that are just locked in stone here. And I think we all need to be thinking about this from a general and be flexible when we're looking at how we move forward. Of course, we need to review it as recommended, and then education is necessary. As we look at the general fund needs, we wanted to come back around to make sure that we hit on this before we close today. I just did a little bit of calculations just quickly here. The total need, according to my calculations, for all of these 5 areas is about $48 million per year. And right now we have an average of $16 million allocated per year. It's interesting that Commissioner Ramirez kept talking about this 33%. The actual amount that we have allocated is basically 33% of what we actually need. And so we have a big ask that we need to consider as we ponder and as we contemplate how we move forward. So what's next? Now, these are recommendations. We need to figure out as a commission whether we want to go with these or how we want to move forward. But we think that there needs to be another task force, imagine that, including up to 3 commissioners. The notion of transparency and accountability, I think, has been emphasized over and over. I think it's important that we make sure that we do that, make sure we're intentional about doing that. We want to continue to work with staff, and we need to make sure that this commission is updated on a regular basis. Community engagement campaign is absolutely necessary. What's been recommended is that we look at a year-long campaign, kind of what we did with the mask ordinance, the mask campaign. Continue to build community awareness of outcomes and strategies. Again, I think we have to be creative, and we need to go to the places that the community gathers, because a lot of times we say we're doing community awareness and we don't get the kind of results that we want. But we need to make sure that the public understands all of the components that are interrelated to infrastructure, making sure that we get their participation in the budgeting process. And what I mean by that is I think we need to continue to look at ways we can engage them to engage with us, to tell us what's on their mind. So those are the things that are simply recommended to this commission. And I think that is the conclusion. Jeff, Angel, if you all have any summative comments,
No,
right ahead.
no additional comments.
All right. We're back in your hands. Okay. Mayor, it's in your hands.
Commissioner Davis?
Thank you so much, Mayor. Ooh, that's a little loud. I will have to go here momentarily, but I wanted to at least be here to really champion the great work that y'all have done, right? All of my colleagues on the commission. It is really an honor to, serve in this capacity, and to our staff from Parks and Rec, Buildings and Logistics, from Public Works. Thank you all for your efforts. My, recommendation would be, as we continue this conversation with the budget, is that we have some sort of forecasting that kind of goes along with this process, that as we are talking about the needs, we have predicted expenses and predicted revenue. And if this already exists, please excuse my ignorance, but I cannot undermine any of those efforts, because we really, really need them. And then lastly, I'll say on the community engagement piece, we absolutely need that. And our communications department is very capable. We saw that during the ARPA subcommittee process, where they got a lot of community members involved. And so I'm excited to be on this team, because I do think we can push these things forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner King?
Mayor, was this the task force that you wanted me to lead?
That could be a part of it. Just to answer that question, I did in anticipation of infrastructure money coming down from the state, which we haven't really got that notification of that yet. But Commissioner Kane and Commissioner Stites have agreed to start up the infrastructure task force. And so Commissioner Kane would chair that, and Commissioner Stites would co-chair that. So that is in place. And I believe when they're ready to go to work, that work will proceed.
Well, I have some information. I've already met with Secretary Lorenz. Went to the meeting, been around her about 4 or 5 times, took her to lunch. And I think the best way to start is Commissioner Stites and I sit down with some staff, some people from Public Works, to see what projects they can help pay. Now, the weird part about that is $3.9 billion for the state of Kansas. But there's a side of it that you can get the grants to help cover what we can't cover. So this is bigger than what I thought it was. She has a group that I've watched now twice. They're extremely good, and I think we should have them come and tell us, and then say, here's some of what we have that need to be fixed. Can you tell us what qualifies for that? In fact, we've already had one project that we worked on the Agriculture Hall of Fame that qualifies for some assistance. So this is bigger than what I thought it was. And I think I almost said something I shouldn't have. There's a lot of money. So, oh boy. But I think we're headed in the right direction with this. I appreciate everybody's work. I think it's fantastic that the community is watching us now. And believe it or not, they watch every one of these meetings to see what we're doing. I think this is a move in the right direction, and I think it's going to work. And then, oh, did I say I need a parking piper?
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I really appreciate that, Commissioner Kane. I think that's going to be really helpful, and especially in the near term, right? We know that some of the goals we've set forward, we're saying by 2045. So obviously 10 years down, 15 years down, we've got to find funding mechanisms to, but if we can solve some major problems right now, that's fantastic news. What I think about with regard to us as a body is, particularly right now as we go into budget. Can we have a healthy, robust conversation that allows us to negotiate our way to the things in the document that we know that we need, that allows us to negotiate our way toward that and balance it against the steps that we all agree we want to see taken toward providing some relief. So that's why I'm referencing it as a balance, as a broadly engaged, healthy conversation. And I believe that we can and we must. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I just want to thank the commissioners who were on the subcommittee that I chaired. As I said, we had many good conversations. And again, thank you to staff for allowing us to have that open and honest conversation. When the very first time we met in my subcommittee, I made the requirement that everyone be open and blunt with each other. It's important that we had those conversations because it was the first time that I believe the commissioners had dove deep into the nitty gritty of public works and having those conversations outside of the budget cycle and outside the Cmyp process. And so I think it was very beneficial that we did that. It shows throughout the years that if we give them the resources, they'll do the work. They can do the work. As I keep the one story I keep telling over and over, during COVID, when we received the CARES Act funding and when the Parks Department under Angel received the $2.1 million from the CARES Act, they did a lot of work within the few months that they had. And it shows, you give them the money, you give them the resources, they'll do the work. So I can't thank our staff enough for everything. And I can't thank enough our commission for wanting to work together and to finally turn a page in our infrastructure situation that we have. If we want to bring in development, if we want to bring more housing, if we want to bring more programming and amenities to our community, we need to have a infrastructure that matches it. We need to have streets that are working, bridges that are working, recreational amenities for our new residents who come in to do things in the community. Community survey says it. Number one issue, infrastructure. That is, as long as I've been here, and I know some commissioners have been here longer than I have, number one issue is infrastructure. And so I'm happy that I was part of this, and I look forward to working with every single one of us, single one of the governing body, with staff and the community to finally turn the page and get things done. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Stites.
Commissioner Stites, District 7. And first off, I want to say I apologize that I'm not there in person. I've got some other things that I'm having to attend to right now, but at least I've got good Wi-Fi signal where I can tune in. But I stand ready to co-chair and chair this committee with Commissioner Kane. I'm ready to move this forward, as just like Commissioner Ramirez just stated. The number one on our survey was our roads, infrastructure, and I think it was followed closely by the blight and trash that we still need to make sure that we're addressing. We need to get those jobs funded. I look forward to moving this forward, and trying to get some good things accomplished and work with the commission on this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley.
Thanks, Mayor. Not to voluntold anyone, but I think it would be a good idea if the third person on that committee was one of the original committee chairs, and I'll just let you guys fight over which one takes that role. But I think it would be good for continuity if one of you filled that third spot, if that's possible, if any of you are willing. I think we've set all the right goals. I think the trick comes as we look at the budget in figuring out how to fund those goals and move these projects forward. So I just think it's really important as we go into the budget season and we hear these requests come back to us for funds that are going to move us toward achieving the goals that we've set here. We have to hear those and react to those appropriately. I'll also say, over the years, I've often advocated for taking those baby steps, and we can't put $48 million more in the budget tomorrow. But if we start taking the steps now, it's going to get less and less painful over time. So I think what has happened in the past is when we've looked at the budget, we've gone, well, we just don't have the money. And so we've not really taken any steps. And I think I'd rather see us take steps over in progression over the years than just say, well, we can't afford it, so we're not going to move forward. And I think this committee structure has helped us to see the necessity of that. And I hope that we'll follow through with that during the budget.
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum.
I would, as Chair of Public Works and Safety, I would offer up myself to your committee if Commissioner Kane and Stites would have me. All right.
Commissioner Stites, District 7, I would, if we need a motion, but I would gladly accept Commissioner Bynum to the committee.
And part of the reason why I say that is because I think it brings a continuity for me, most specifically, of making sure I understand all of the actions and activities and opportunities. So, but I'm happy to do it if it's your desire.
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum. And I just want to say that I'd like to just give a quick shout out. Commissioner Stites and Commissioner Kane, without hesitation, when I brought that to them, they jumped right on board. And I know Commissioner Kane proactively went out, and he's been to several meetings on his own to try and get the good information that this community needs in regards to infrastructure. So thank you, Commissioner Kane, Commissioner Stites, and thank you, Commissioner Bynum. And if the chair is so willing, I have no objections to Commissioner Bynum being a part of that, but I'm going to leave that up to Commissioner Kane. So thank you all so much. Are there any other questions, comments? Okay, I'll turn it back over to our administrator to introduce the presentation for the Cmyp presentation portion of this meeting.
Cheryl Harrison Lee, Interim Administrator. So equally as important to get in the goals is for the long-term plan is looking at what we can do in the short term. And Commissioner Markley has indicated that this is the kind of effort that you want to start with and look at it long-term, but also short-term. And so tonight, we're going to have the presentation for the 2023 through 2027 Cmip. I'll turn it over to our budget manager, Mr. Lindsay.
Get us started? Yeah. Okay. I'll get us started and then hand it over to Reggie. So let's see, capital maintenance improvement program, 5-year Cmip. This is the organization's financial plan regarding capital investment. And we go through this process every year. Now, this is for public consumption. There's a lot of work that goes into a Cmip each year. Reggie's team, finance, public works, parks, a lot of departments involved in this. And at least in the last few years, I've experienced a lot of improvement in that process with Kathleen and Reggie involved and the other departments. They've really made some improvements. So I think we've come a long way. This is the previous discussion is a great segue into this presentation. So I think it's very timely. And I think you'll see it's a little bit different than past. Reggie's got an idea that we work together on to help us maybe consider a couple of those outcomes that we just talked about. So I'll hand it over to Reggie to talk through the process of things and then we'll go from there.
All righty. So when we start the CMIP process, we work through a multiple step process that includes 7 different pillars, which are up on the screen right now. First one that we have is a Cmyp Kickoff. And what we do is we meet with all the managers around the organization, give them instructions on the Cmip process. So we're in the 4th budget cycle where we're using this process. And we go through like a 6-year plan for the items that are over $50,000 that are related to Cmip. And so what the Cmip does, it funds infrastructure construction and rehabilitation and maintenance across the organization. So within that second pillar, we go through where we gather information, and that includes us meeting with over 30 different departments that are vying for capital funds across the organization. So the funding is limited, as we've kind of talked about already tonight. And kind of what happens is there's going to be some funding that someone doesn't get. So one of the key things is that the departments and what we have called core groups have trust in one another. And what those core groups are 3 different groups that we have across the organization that specialize in infrastructure, whether it's horizontal, and that means by streets and bridges, and then also facilities, which are like vertical structures, and then also like our technology and innovation projects. And those kind of include things that help us enhance the operations within the organization, whether it's through software, or whether it's through just other types of computer needs. So what we do in there is basically in gathering information, review data and documents across the organization. And then we move into the next step, which is we review and update our forecast. And Commissioner Davis, he talked about this. So we will definitely be reviewing forecasts with the elected body. And then we move into where we analyze data. And there we kind of data we deal with the worst. With having this data, we're able to deal with our worst infrastructure first. So whether it's like our vertical infrastructure, which is our streets and bridges, or our, I did say I'm in horizontal, but with our vertical infrastructure, which is our facilities. So that helps us deal with that. And then we move into step 5, which is we have recurring meetings just across the organization where we have a prepared capital plan. We work with the county administrator's office, we work with our core groups, and we work with finance, and we work with public works and parks and just all the departments across the organization. And then we move into our 6th step, or 6th pillar, which is we meet with planning and UG Board of Commissions. And so as we sit here tonight, we've already been to the Planning Commission, and CIP runs through multiple advisory groups, which include internal groups, the departments, finance, county administrator's office, and as I said, planning. And now we're here in front of this group, the elected board of commission. And then we move into where we implement everything after we approve it in the budget. So now I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Just a quick list of highlights for this year. Got a number of great things going out there. Fire station out in Pearson Park, 7th and Central, as most of you have probably experienced. Annual pavement preservation, of course. Park at Hutton and Leavenworth, and then improvements at Clifton and City Parks. That is this year. Next slide, please. I'm not sure you've all seen this slide before, but it's our 5 buckets. Yeah. It's our 5 buckets. I won't spend a lot of time on that. Commissioner Johnson did a great job of highlighting that. Next slide. I'll hand it over to Reggie.
All right. So what we have here is a view of our CMIP, and it's our traditional CMIP. What we traditionally have been able to afford, and one of the things Commissioner Markley talked about is working towards adding more funding into the budget so that we could meet some of the needs that we talked about. So we wanted to kind of show what traditionally we have been budgeting, and this is kind of what we start off every year at our base budget. So what we're doing is giving a view of our 6-year CMIP, and we got the years going down down the left-hand side and kind of breaks out into the different funding buckets. So we see we have like street preservation going across horizontally. We have bridges and facilities and parks and fleet and technology. So we just kind of wanted to give a view of what traditional funding has looked like. So the dilemma with the traditional funding is we have always funded like this. And the reason we've done this is because we just have not had enough funding to provide more money. So now we're trying to look at different ways into where we can like seep more money into the budget over the years.
We have a question. Commissioner Markley.
Question, I think really just confirmation. So you're saying traditional CMIP as in this is what we have done in the past, right? And what we have done is basically we have flat rate funded CMIP because that's the money we had in prior year budgets and that's the money we had available with no attachment to what was needed that year. We just said, this is a flat rate we're given to it, even whether the need was down here or up here, we just did a flat amount.
That is correct. And also, to be honest with you, sometimes we did not know what we needed in the past. I mean, one of the things that
this is not shocking to me, but
one of the things that Jeff and his group has introduced to us, whether it's with facilities or whether it's with infrastructure, is we actually know what we need. And before we didn't know what we needed to do. We had an idea, but now we know exactly what facilities we need to go after, what infrastructure we need to go after.
I should be clear that my laugh was about the times prior to Jeff coming to us when it was clear we didn't know what we needed. So appreciate Jeff Fisher's work here.
And here, this is just another view of CMIP. This kind of drills down more into the CMIP where first we had the buckets, but one of the amounts is the annual pavement preservation, where we kind of see, those steady amounts going across. And then also the bridge repair is just steady amounts at like $1.8 million. And then, if you look down into facilities, we do build new facilities here and there, but like just some of the infrastructure just kind of stays the same across the page. So just drilling down into it, we want to show you all those projects. Here's just another page that kind of does the same thing. So what we're introducing here is our needs-based CMIP. And what we're doing is kind of modeling here what it looks like, what we need to do to get to the plan of like improving our infrastructure, to get into the PCI indexes and the facility indexes that we need to do into the future. So where we really have done the modeling at is in street preservation and bridges, because this is definitely where we have the information on what we need into the future. So one of the key things down here is like we need $110 million for street preservation. And in the prior, like what we fund now in the budget is like $39 million. So we're like $71 million short. And then if we go over to bridges, we need $57 million to fund everything. And what we have now in the budget is $3 million. So we're like $55 million short. So you can kind of see here, looking at bridges, we're bridges and both street preservation, we're increasing the numbers each year. We're not putting all the money in there that we need at one time, but what we're doing is trying to work our way up each year. So in 2023, we want to go from almost $500,000 to $5 million. And then in 2024, go up to $10 million. And then by 2025, we will have the amount of funding that is ideally to get us to the where we need to be. And then with street preservation, you kind of see we're working our way up from $2.4 million to $9.4 million. And each year we're just kind of going up to 2027 where we got $24 million within the budget. So the dilemma here is basically what goes on is we blow the expense budget up. So right now we're doing these, we can't afford these, but what we need to do is drill down into the budget and see where we can unleash different fundings from expenditure wise. And so also this is same kind of view we have with the traditional budget, but now we have the needs based budget. And we can see this highlight here, just going across horizontally what that looks like. And we can see where we had the $2.4 million and we start going up over 6 years, or a total of $91 million. And then with the annual bridge repair, we go from 300,000 to 5 million. Then we get up to like ideally what we would need to be spending over the years. Just kind of drilling down and seeing some of the other projects. So that, okay. So the main thing here is that we don't have the funding right now, but as Commissioner Markley said, just working through this budget cycle, we can come up with some solutions, and resources are tight. We don't have any new revenues coming in. Also, we have expenditures challenges just as far as like cost of things are going up. Our costs are increasing more than our revenue growth is. So those are some of the different things that we're going to have to deal with coming into the budget cycle. I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff.
This is an attempt to just sort of graphically show what the increase in investment in street preservation looks like versus street maintenance. So the top, the light blue line is street preservation ramping up to 20 million plus, which is the red line. And then the darker blue line at the bottom is what you can expect street maintenance costs to look like over that period. And the longer it takes to get to the 20 plus million, the faster that blue curve is going to grow. And we're already experiencing that. You're experiencing it every day with potholes. I mean, the guys and girls are working tirelessly. We've even worked Saturdays this season to get caught up. And it's each year getting harder and harder to catch up, and especially after winter. So it's just simply to point out that the longer it takes to increase investment in street preservation, the more we're going to pay in street maintenance. So the difference is, of course, that the customers are unhappy with the higher street maintenance costs, right? Because they're experiencing it every day, the citizens.
Mayor, just to piggyback on.
Commissioner Bynum, go ahead.
Thank you so much. The converse then is also true. If I'm following what you said and the visualization, the sooner we invest in street preservation, the sooner the street maintenance costs go down.
Or flatten out, and yes, over time we might get it to go down. That's right.
Money well spent.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's all I was trying to do. Hopefully it made sense. Next slide. So I guess the questions for the, sorry.
I'm sorry, Ramirez. Commissioner Ramirez, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Jeff can continue with this slide. I'll ask questions.
Yes.
Mr. Kane, did you have a question? Okay.
Okay. So I guess the questions are for the elected body. Do you support a needs-based CMIP? And should staff begin to construct a needs-based CMIP? And that's the end of the presentation.
Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question on some of in the snapshot of the needs-based CMIP, it says in facilities, the grand total is 29.6, but in the traditional CMIP snapshot, it says facilities grand total is 71.4. How and why is that lower when everything else went up? How did facilities go down in a needs-based CMIP?
So one of the things we do have with facilities is a little different from like our horizontal infrastructure with streets and bridges. We do have continued maintenance, but we do have like buildings that we build every year. And so sometimes those fall off. And that makes the costs go down within the schedule.
Might add, Commissioner Ramirez, you might remember in the infrastructure subcommittees, and you mentioned it in your comments, vertical, the facilities problem is different from, as Reggie indicated, the linear stuff, in that we have a lot of them, and the theme was right sizing. And so we don't not yet know kind of how to project those costs yet until we have the additional studies done, which would be in a few months or later this year. And so once we have a better idea of where those opportunities are to like reduce square footage or repurpose facilities or right size or build a new rec center or whatever is going to happen, it's hard to project that. And so I think Reggie's doing the best he can with John Kelly's help to do that.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious. I saw that and I just wanted to make sure I was reading it correctly. To the two questions you have, do you support a needs-based CMIP? I would say yes. I believe it's something that has been needed. We just had the outcomes and strategies, and Commissioner Kane and Commissioner Stites' committee on the infrastructure task force. I think the needs-based CMIP, as I said in my comments before, is going to help us turn that page. Jeff, you've come to us many, many times sounding the alarm of what our infrastructure is going to look like in 10 years. I think it's time for us to actually do the work. We keep talking about it, and I think a needs-based CMIP is going to help us get there. It's going to take a while, but we need to continue to have the conversation and continue the investment and increase in investment so that 10, 20 years from now, we're not looking at failing infrastructure across our entire city or county. And I think, in my opinion, I do think staff should look into conducting a needs-based CMIP instead of what Commissioner Markley said. Instead of just giving a flat rate or a flat amount every year, not looking at what is needed and what's not needed. It should reflect on what is needed to be built, what needs to be preserved, maintained. I think it's the best foot forward. And again, let's turn that page and get work done. Listen to the community survey and let's fix our infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kane.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you go back to slide 6, please? Page 3, slide 6. Right there. Jeff, that 2606 Fairfax Traffic Way, is that the area I sent you down to look at?
That is, Commissioner, yes.
Okay. And this is where the problem is. It becomes a safety issue. We've closed down the southbound lane coming away from the General Motors plant. And how many tankers did you see that day when you were down there, Mr. Fisher, sir?
A lot of them.
A significant amount. I wouldn't ask you that question if I didn't know. But the bottom line is this is something that needs to be fixed now, not later. You know, it's a Commissioner Townsend area, but I'm telling you, it's a death trap. And with those tankers, with all the fuel, and it doesn't matter what kind of fuel it is, it's a boatload of fuel. So, and at 4 o'clock, it's an accident waiting to happen. So one, I think we need to move that forward to 2023. And two, I think this is a perfect example where you call the Secretary Lorenz and say, does this qualify for one of the things that can get fixed? And her office will literally give you the answer that day. And if it's not that day, it'll be in the next couple of days. So I think this is one that we should do as an example. Call them up and say, hey, I'm Jeff Fisher from so-and-so, and I got this project, and let's go meet them down there. And look at what's going on, because me telling you isn't near as dangerous as watching it. And I think this project is one that we need to ask them, and worst case scenario, we need to move it forward. And is there another funding way to where we can move that forward and not mess up the other projects that are scheduled for 2023?
Oh, well, we'll explore those options for sure. And we can look into grants for sure as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Markley and Commissioner Johnson.
Thanks, Mayor. Can you go back just one slide? I think it's just the one before. This attitude is what got us into the situation that we're in, because needs started to increase. And this was long before any of us were here, really. Needs started to increase, but the message to departments was don't spend any more money. So they just kept it flat. And then things just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And here we are today. So obviously we shouldn't continue that. It didn't work. It was a bad method. We need to move forward with the idea that we should be budgeting based on our needs. Obviously, we can't jump up and fund everything next year exactly the way that this chart shows, although, well, that would be lovely, but we can't jump up and do $91 million next year. It's not going to happen. But if we start moving that way, and every year we're thinking about how much more we need to put in, and we're sort of basing it on maybe a percentage of what the need is, at least if we have that attitude and we have that understanding that our amount we're budgeting should be somehow tied to our need and not just a flat rate, I think that gets us a long way. We can start biting off the elephant little piece by little piece and get us where we need to be. But that traditional method, and it's our fault too as commissioners, because even after we were here, we kept moving forward with that. Budget would come out and have the flat rate from last year. We'd say, great, didn't go up. Yay. That's what got us in this position to begin with. That's what caused the whole problem. So I'm in favor of moving forward with the needs, or the needs-based budgeting. That's what we're calling it. Needs-based.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if I'm going to clarify or muddy the conversation, but I just want to make sure that, Jeff, you clarify, this does not include stormwater and wastewater, these numbers.
This is just general fund.
So we still have to chew, bite, nibble, I don't know what you do, on stormwater, wastewater as well. So it's out there.
Thank you, Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad one of my colleagues mentioned something in my district, so I don't sound greedy about it. But this is a perfect example of explaining again the difference between what we've done, each of us, in identifying certain needs anyway. So how is this going to be really different? It's actually a two-pronged inquiry that I want to make clear, or I'm not going to make it clear, but put it out for clarification. Because each year we come up with, I need Fairfax, I need, the crumbled tennis court in Quindaro Park, then I'm gonna get it all out since we're on. So, do we need needs-based? Yes, and we've done that. So how is this really going to be different consistently, keeping in mind what our community has said in response to the survey? Streets, Fairfax would certainly be consistent with that, would it not? That's right. So, and parks. So just so we're all clear, how will this really be different than what we did? Tying in also, how are we going to increase the dollar needs in each of these categories that we've talked about? Just so we're clear. So.
Administrator?
Yes, I'll start with Cheryl Harrison Lee, Interim Administrator. I'll start with that, and then I'll pass it over to our Public Works Director. With the inventory and some of the work that we have that looks at conditions index, we're able to allocate resources to those areas that have the greatest need. This allows the governing body to really see the progress by specific projects. You're looking at those projects that have the greatest need based on the scoring. The ability to actually use need-based then allows you to kind of track your progress for the 5 years and even beyond that. So I think what it will do is it will help you really prioritize those areas or those projects that are at the greatest need, because you've got a lot of data, you've got a lot of inventory work now that you can utilize to do that.
Commissioner Townsend.
So that brings me into, I guess, debt finance. a sheet here that shows the Fairfax project, department priority. Correct me if I'm wrong. So the department is saying, yeah, this is the number one priority. But rank, what is the rank about? Because it has 0 rank.
So the rankings are something that we do internally, and it's tied to different measures that we have internally as far as they tie back to like priority-based budgeting. Also it ties back to just criteria of things that are entered by the departments. That's what that 0 ties to. And I don't know if it is a 0 for that or not, but usually on that ranking, the higher that particular ranking, the better it is, or the more it shows that the more it needs to be done.
Well, and I don't want to get into too detailed. I'll make a point, but I am in favor of the priority system. I'm just not sure how that is different than what we've all been doing. But,
That's okay.
Could you hear me, Mayor? I'm sorry.
Yes.
All right, sorry. I am in favor of it. Just want to make sure we're doing something different to get this accomplished. Because I thought we were doing that before, each of us coming forward with our projects. So I'm in favor of that. And also looking into how are we going to increase the dollars that we talked about incrementally to get them into the buckets that will help us better street conditions, parks, et cetera. It's been talked about tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Commissioner Kane on deck, Commissioner Markland, and Commissioner Bynum.
And the reason that I say prioritize that is because it's unsafe. And I don't mean just unsafe, it's unsafe. So, and Fisher and you guys, you do a great job for us. And I would make this a priority 1 because of all the traffic, all the people that are employed down there, all the people that work down there. I mean, you're talking about 10,000 people that are in that area every single day. And they have to get down and they're carrying some stuff that's extremely volatile. And before you got here, Fisher, one of the tankers caught on fire down there, and it took about 2.5 days to burn itself out. And I don't want to see something like that happen again. And I already talked to Jeff about this. I mean, I don't keep no secrets from him because I sent him down there for a reason. I got called down there at the same gas station to watch it for some guys I used to work with. And they said, what do you think? And he rides a motorcycle and he about got creamed because 2 tankers were trying to merge at the same time. So I just think that should be one of our top priorities.
I think I can answer Commissioner Townsend's question about how it differs, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. So it used to be, or has been, we would bring our projects that we wanted to have be a priority, but we didn't increase the funding. Staff just took out other projects and put in the projects that we said were a priority because we only gave them a flat amount to spend. So we were giving them the needs, but we weren't increasing the amount. They were just taking one thing out or pushing it back and putting another thing in there because we asked them to. We're still only giving them $5 million. Under this new system, if we're saying there's a need, we would increase the funding to fund the need instead of just taking out another project that was also needed to put in the project, which is what we had been doing because we never increased the flat amount.
So it sounds like the difference then is in addition to us giving the needs, as we always have done, we're going to give you from somewhere, someplace, some money, so it becomes not just a wish list, but an execution list.
That's right.
And I mean that in the best sense. Not a hit list.
Yeah.
But, well, yes, hit this, and hit this, maybe so. Thank you, Commissioner Markley. Yes, yeah, because we've done needs before, but now it has to come with some resources. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on all that because I think sometimes when I say these things out loud, I'm kind of saying them to myself to make sure that I understand. But, you know, the presentation that we went through at 5 o'clock was really heavy on emphasizing the data, the fact that we're using data to create things like a ranking and an apartment priority and a pavement condition index and all of the other measurements that our public works and facilities and fleet folks have created or at least brought to the unified government. And I think the Fairfax traffic way issues kind of an interesting example because it's a priority because it's not safe. And the way that the data is being collected might be different, and maybe safety is a part of that, but maybe it's not, you know, the top part. So I feel like this is the part of the conversation where we are in that balance. And for me, this is kind of part of that conversation where the elected body says, this needs to be a priority if it's not. And I'm looking at 700,000. And I hate to be, I'm not trying to be sarcastic or coy in any way, but I'm just saying, if we need to find 700,000 to move this to the priority and immediate listing, I would imagine we could do that. And maybe it's harder than it sounds, but I would, you know, I'm speaking obviously in favor of moving this up the chain, moving this up the timeline. But I want to make sure that you are helping us go back and understand the way that we have ranked things, the way that we have given priority to things, because it's really important that we do all have a baseline grasp of that. So with that, I'll stop.
Commissioner Johnson, then Commissioner Townsend, and then we'll go back to you, Jeff.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. And I'm apprehensive about bringing this up, but when we look at the balance sheet, we already know that we're leveraged. Right? So this then, in my opinion, nuances our conversations regarding the mill levy. Now, this is not a discussion about mill levy, but it's going to impact it in some manner. And I just want to put that out there, that marker out there, because, you know, the need, and we say we know we don't want to add much more debt than we already have to the balance sheet. We're already leveraged, and all the auditors and everybody has already said that. So, you know, I know our constituents, so the taxpayers are saying, you know, we want our taxes to be lowered. And so we got to think about both hands here, the balancing scale of how we do that.
Thank you, Mayor. And as a member of the Infrastructure Committee, if I were to submit a list right now, that would be in keeping with what we've said and the work done within that. Is it in the streets? Is it in street lighting? Is it bridges, parks? So it would be keeping within that structure, not to undo the work. Now, realizing that all of those projects may not be done, to tell the truth about it, because everybody will have their priority. So when Commissioner King mentions safety, yeah, that wouldn't be my lead. My lead is what I know that street looks like. And safety is another aspect as well that may or may not promote its actual clearance or the project moving forward at any given time, as well as how much it's going to cost. Can we do more potholes than the 700,000? But yeah, I would intend to submit a list that's in keeping with what the infrastructure committee said. And then it's a matter of us saying what we can take advantage of. And also, timing is perfect for submitting these things and seeing what at the national level could be done using that money that we may only have access to this year or the year after. So I didn't want to give the impression that I wanted to undo anything done by that subcommittee, because that was most important work.
Mr. Burrows, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Burrows, at-large District 2. In listening to all of my colleagues this evening, we're starting the budget process, and this is very good data, and it's very important data, and it's needs versus want versus have. And we're all going to be torn to make some tough decisions. I will just state this. There are ways to continue to fund some of these projects within the budget. I have expressed that for the last 2 to 3 years. We get our budget in order, we will be able to prioritize some of these and get some of them off. But if I may, I want to look at an example. And I believe I want to look at the example, I think that we just talked about, the safety issue. That is a return on investment that we can ill afford to ignore. Because if we have an incident there, it's going to cost us so much more. We had a breach in our security, in our IT security. We pay for that after instead of investing in it. And I want to use an example. There's something I've seen on the Cmyp, and it's the Wyandotte County Lake water line, $500,000 a year. Jeff, how many years has that been on the Cmyp list?
I don't recall, Commissioner. It's been 2 or 3 years, and I think they do a little bit each year.
This is an example because it's costing more now to do it because we've extended it out 3 or 4 years instead of having a contractor or somebody come in and get the project done at one cost. It was a priority. It's a health priority. Water is a health issue. It should have been completed in one step, not divided over 4 or 5 years. So where it continues to climb in expense. And I don't know if the crew stays out there. I don't know if they leave their equipment there. These are things that I'm sure you're aware of, but it's things like that what I call a waste. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of resources. And when our community continues to see projects taken forever to be finished, it's not a good return on our investment. The street light project that you brought up, Commissioner Townsend, is an ideal project. We light up this community. We are going to get so much more community activism. People will want to walk. We'll be a healthier community. That walkability comes into play. Then comes the need for sidewalks. Then comes the public safety aspect that our community wants to see invested. Those things are also on the list that we must not forget. And that is part of our social welfare, is part of our infrastructure. And I would hope that we not lose sight of that. But I know I stand ready to make some of the tough decisions, and I'm not afraid to make decisions. And as we move along and I gore your cow, I apologize. But bottom line is we've got a tremendous priority of items before us, and collectively, I think we can get through it. But it's going to be a change for us. But anyway, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Before I proceed, I had a quick question, and I agree with the needs base. I think things should be predicated on need. I think that's a good direction to go. So I share the same sentiment with the commission and the body. I just have a quick question just for clarity. How can the commission, from what I'm hearing, be more proactively involved in these decisions when you talk about what is priority? And what are those priorities predicated on? Who makes those decisions to decide what the priorities for our community are? How much is this commission involved in making those decisions? And then how do we arrive at those costs? Where are those costs? Are those cost estimates? Where are those costs actually coming from? And the other piece, it's always a concern for me because I just believe that things should be community driven. That can either be from staff or the elected body. But are we involving the community and being a part of this process for CMP, whether it's safety or what other priority needs are, so that when we're making these decisions, like Commissioner Johnson said, when we find that balance, and safety should always be put first, but outside of that, to find that balance to make sure that what we're doing is community driven when we talk about priorities. So it should be not just staff, in my opinion, but commission, and then also in some form, the community. And I know that we're using the survey as part of that, and that's fine. But if you can answer that question, because I think just from my history working here and just from what I'm hearing and what I've heard from some of our commissioners is the commissioners want to have a more leading from the front role in some of these decisions as opposed to just being given options from staff. And so what does that look like? And maybe the administrator can answer that as well.
I am really glad you asked that question. I have, I could, there are many ways, there are many improvements that have been made to that process. I remember maybe a year or two into joining the team, sitting in standing committee or CMIP discussions and a couple of commissioners expressing interest in wanting to be more engaged in the CMIP and the budget process. So one way that Public Works and Budget have worked together on is the CMIP process to select the ranking and scoring. So the commission has had 3 years now, opportunity to talk about the criteria that's used to score and rank projects and been able to adjust those if they desired. We did make one adjustment this year as a result of that. So that's one way. Another way is over the last year, I believe, Public Works has created a map that has been shown to the commission 2 or 3, 4 times that gives the public an ability to get on there and put in a submission for a project. So that's another way. What else have we done over the last few years?
So as of recently this year, we did the .talk budget.
Right.
And we did get some feedback from there, and we will be incorporating that. We're also going to be presenting that in a couple of weeks to the commission, and that's strictly community driven. And then also we have a budget similarity that we have where we have got a lot of input regarding the infrastructure for our projects also. And then we also do have the public hearing also that we have 2 a year where we do get feedback from the community.
We've also engaged the Planning Commission at a higher level in the last couple of years. They are supposed to be the body that helps develop the CMIP and move it forward to the commission as a recommendation. So that's another way to increase engagement. So I'm trying to, there's probably a couple other ways, but I'm glad you asked that question because that's absolutely a priority. It should be data driven, it should be systematic, and there should be a lot of engagement. And so each year over the last few years, as we've developed the CMIP ranking and scoring system, we tried to start earlier and earlier. So we had more time to engage. And I think this year we'll really start in the fall, early fall, so that we have more time to assess what's being proposed, what's being scored and ranked, and make more informed decisions. Let's see what else. If you don't mind, I want to go back to Commissioner Burrow's comments. The waterline project's a good example, I think, what was discussed earlier, which is that flat line budget approach. You know, if we have pressure and a lot of competing needs and we can only afford so much a year, well, that could be a good reason why the water line was stretched out over multiple years. We have many examples of that. And then I wanted to go back to the discussion earlier about the CMIP ranking and scoring. That you all characterized it in some very important ways, right? And safety is a factor in the criteria. And if you remember Robbie Anderson, as he was developing that and making presentations about it, he always said there would be a human element to it, which is every one of you having an opportunity to weigh in and the public. And Fairfax Traffic Way is actually a great example. It was in the queue, and with all the competing needs, just trying to figure out where to plug it in, right? And Commissioner Kane asked me to go out with that concern of fuel trucks out there. While I was out there, I did observe many trucks at peak hour. I think it was 4:30 in the afternoon. And what you wouldn't catch in the system that Robbie's created is that the trucks have to stop at the railroad tracks. And that creates, not only do they have to merge, they have to stop. And so traffic's backing up. And so that's a human element. That's an imperfection in the system, right? So thankfully we caught that. And it increased the safety problem or concern. So trying to fit it into the Cmyp in the next year or 2 or 3, I believe I would recommend we do that.
Thank you, Commissioner Bynum, then Commissioner Burrows.
Thank you. I just kind of want to circle back to your question, Mayor, because, especially around the community engagement piece, because it is important and it comes up a lot in the conversations that we have. And I think staff kind of started from what's the data telling us piece. And Jeff really has brought that. How do we find the data, measure the data, how do we capture it? And then they've layered in I'm really proud of the layering in of the community aspect of it, because, just the ability to go online and say, in my case, let's say I'm saying I want a street light by my house, which I actually did say, and found out that we're probably not going to get one because there's no power to my north. So something that should only be a couple $100 is actually more like 30 to 50,000. Interesting exercise to go through, but at least I was able to, participate in that process. But nonetheless, I digress. One of the things that has been beneficial to me as a result of participating in these infrastructure committees is the fact that staff has been given the opportunity over and over and over and over again with me to say, here's the map, here's the link, here's the projects, here's the calendar. It's all on their website. It's all there. And so including the fact that it's interactive. And so it makes me think perhaps through our communications, through our public communications, we could maybe enumerate right now, since it is budget time, some of these ways that Mr. Fisher has described that we have actively undertaken to engage our community, particularly in this arena. And I want to go back to one of the first things you said when you were describing bringing the prioritization and the methodology for that to the commissioners. Is it fair for me to say that that primarily has happened within Public Works and Safety, or has it happened among the entire commission? Because I don't remember. Do you? I mean, I know it comes to Public Works.
Are you asking if we've in our discussions at full commission described this process?
Yes, and asked for the feedback, because I know that it's happened at that standing committee level. I just can't recall.
I can't recall either.
Okay.
But it's at least been at planning commission and then standing
I
committee.
guess I would say, to that end, perhaps we could bring it to the other standing committees or bring it here, because I know for a fact it's been at Public Works and Safety, but it's not a voting item. So it doesn't move forward. It's a discussion. And we talk about the prioritization, and then we probably go on to the next thing. But anyway, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Burrows at large District 2. I might suggest to our colleagues as we move forward working with the budget, when we have an issue like the Fairfax issue that becomes a major public safety issue, we have a contingency reserve. We may want to look at what criteria would allow us to use contingency reserve money for emergency repairs and not let it become a cash pot for every little incident that doesn't get funded through CMIP, but a real true public need so that we have those monies available. We know they're available so that we don't have to try to build the support on the commission to cut away one project to do another. Those reserves are there for just that reason, to repair a critical piece of infrastructure or a need within our community that is of an emergency basis or a public safety basis.
Commissioner Markley.
Thanks, Mayor. As Commissioner Bynum was saying, sometimes I just have to say things out loud to make sure that I'm clear in my thinking. You know, the idea of doing this ranking system was for us to be approaching these projects as objectively as possible. Because before we were doing a ranking system, what would happen is somebody would come forward with their amazing project during budget season. Back then, budget season started in June and ended in July, so there wasn't a lot of time for discussion. And we would jam this project into the budget and it would boot out some other project. And what we realized is when we turned around and looked backward after the budget was over, we'd be like, that project that we bumped really should have been the priority. So we were happy to get the project we wanted, but we bumped the project that really was maybe a greater need in our enthusiasm over the other project. So the idea is for the community and the commission to all submit their projects, and then for those projects to get that objective rating with the human element so that we can make sure that when we bump a project to prioritize another project, we're bumping the right project and we're not taking a priority project off the list to put in what is either the same priority or a lower priority project because we had, you know, some in the moment enthusiasm. So definitely, I feel like we experienced that in the past before we started ranking projects. And the point of being more objective about it is to make sure that we're not just getting excited about a project or just hearing a few voices talk about a project when maybe another project is more critical but less sexy. We got to make sure that we're making decisions that are objectively based on some criteria that we can defend too when our constituents come to us and say, well, why did Commissioner Burrows' neighborhood get a project and this project over here didn't get done? Is that because he's a commissioner? And you can say, no, it has nothing to do with that. See, we have these objective criteria. I went through that because they repaved Swartz Road and I said, please don't repave my street. Please, I did. Jeff is like, I just don't do it. Don't do it. Because then everybody says, that's the commissioner's street. Is that why it got repaved? And Jeff's like, no, commissioner, we really have to do it. So you want to have that objective criteria, both so we know we're doing the right thing and so we can defend what we're doing to those people who are saying, well, why wasn't it my project that got done? Why not mine? And you can say, well, not yours, because yours is a great project and it's a high priority, but it didn't have the same level of need as all of these other ones based on our ranking.
Thank you, Commissioner Ramirez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two questions. Well, question, kind of a statement. We'll see. For the link where anybody, community members can submit projects. What are the criteria for what constitutes a project? Because I'm thinking now of some community members might say a pothole and submit that onto the link, or a broken sidewalk or a broken curb and submit that to the link. What in your mind constitutes a project that could be submitted in that form?
Well, I think the idea is that we really don't want to restrain them from putting in whatever they want. And so I believe it's set up that they can. And then if there are, things to work through, then staff could work through that with them to better scope it. And I believe it gives you some idea what it would cost versus what you think it might cost, which is, I think, what Commissioner Burrows or Bynum was talking to. But I believe it's set up to where they can put anything in there. Then we can evaluate it.
Okay. Oh, I think that's great. Because then that gives, as you said, it gives an estimated cost of what it could be. Our communications department, strategic communications department, does an amazing job of getting things out in the community, especially on social media. I feel like every time I go on Facebook, I see an ad for the budget simulator. And I think if we did something like that for Public Works, advertise that link. If you see an issue, Public Works or a street or any type of project like that, if your road needs being done or sidewalk or potholes, what have you, if we can advertise that to the community so that our Public Works department, I know they already know what's out there, but so that the community feels involved in that, as the mayor was saying, involve the community. And that could be part of it. Having them, our constituents know what's around them and what needs to be done, and allow them to be part of it and submit those projects to our team to rate. They'll get information back. And another way we can, in our 5 o'clock meeting, they talked about an education campaign to educate the community about the outcomes and strategies document that we developed. Part of that could be a twofold. Talk about this and say, hey, also, we have this outcomes and strategies document that the commission has worked on, they developed. Great. Also, here's this link where if you have an infrastructure issue within your neighborhood, you can provide that information to the staff. They'll rate it, get information to you so that it's part of that education. Our community doesn't really pay attention to what we talk about here unless it's budget time. And when we talk about it at a level that we know what we're saying to each other, but not so much to the community. And so I think that education is going to be very key in all of this, especially with our infrastructure and with the link. I'm glad that we have that. I'm fully aware of what it can do. I have a lot of constituents, especially in Rosedale, who come to me and ask about, well, what about this street, about this sidewalk? I'm going to say, well, here's the link, put in the information, what is happening. Staff will get back with you with information. And then from there, we'll work together with staff, the commission, and community. All three will work together to see where we can get that project in the prioritization process. It's a three-legged stool. We need to work together. Thank you.
Thank you. Administrator, do you have anything? Ms. Harrison Lee, did you have anything?
Yes, I think that we have an opportunity to bring this back and have some more discussion. We've got several budget work sessions scheduled. It's really important, I think, to look at the prioritization, particularly when you start looking at street preservation. At some point, the delay, the costs get exponentially more. And so to the extent that we can, it's important to fund those improvements as soon as we can. But we certainly, to the mayor's question about how do we get the commission more in the front loading of this conversation, we can have that at one of our scheduled budget sessions that we have over the course of the next several weeks.
Thank you. Commissioner Burrows.
Thank you. Colleagues, I would hope that as we work into this budget about the prioritization, I know we do this in the legislature quite a bit. We put things in statute or we make rules and regs as to how something should move forward, what criteria gives it super prioritization over something else. That could very well be of benefit if we want to defend a project that we know is extremely important versus an emergency project. So it may be that we may want to look at putting some criteria on how we bring projects forward to ensure that we're not bumping projects for the sake of bumping them. One emergency over another emergency. What's the return on investment today versus next week? Something like that we may want, because if we've got Public Works trying to coordinate all of this, the hard thing is you're only limited with so much time and money. And if we put another project on, something's got to hold. and you've got to reprioritize, it slows the process down. I think the more we educate ourselves about what we do to set that prioritization would be a benefit to staff and would help us moving forward when it comes to budget time. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. One thing I'd like to add, I was out at the Fleet Center the other day and with Jeff and some of his team. And one of the things of consideration, I really don't see that on the CMIP, and maybe it is, and if I overlooked it, I apologize, but just technology. For example, there's a new truck that patches potholes. It requires one person where normally it would, you want to describe that too and share that and how that's really important, how it saves manpower costs, time costs, and you know, time is money. And just that small investment could save our taxpayers a lot of money moving forward. So Jeff.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, it's a fairly new piece of equipment. We've been exploring for about a year. So right now we have, or about 3 years ago, UG, you all gave us authority to purchase 2 hot patchers. That's built for 2 things. One is the temporary filling of potholes and then come back later and cut it out and put in a more permanent patch. This machine is a spray patcher, 1 person in the truck, and they pull up, arm goes out, they fill the pothole and they move on to the next one. Incredibly efficient. And so what systematically, I think what staff will do is use it to get out in front, fill them, and the repair is it's pretty decent longevity, but then it gives the pothole patchers time to get there and make a more permanent repair instead of the pothole patchers trying to do both. So thank you, Mayor, for that opportunity.
Yeah. Commissioner Bynum.
Mayor, if I go out there, can I drive that? I'd like to drive that truck.
If you do that, they'll push you to work. So
Okay,
you
maybe
tell
I
them what
won't.
you ask for.
I retract.
But yeah, so I like what I'm hearing and the technology piece. And I know Commissioner Kane brought up grants. I think grant opportunities are really important. And there are millions of dollars out there. I've been talking to folks at both the state and federal level. And really, I know our administrators exploring that of really just having staff really look at these grant opportunities that exist, because there's a lot of money that we may be missing out on that can offset some of these projects and really offset some of the priorities that are in our budget. So looking forward to that. Are there any more questions, discussion? Okay, well, this concludes our special session. I'm going to move to adjourn. I got a second, but can I get a first? Okay, I got a motion and I got a second.
Who did the second?
Okay, roll call, please.
Roll call. Townsend?
Here, yes. Go home. Let's go home. Yes.
Ramirez?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Kane? Markley?
Aye.
Stites? Davis? Bynum?
Aye.
Burrows?
Aye.
Motion is 7-0. That motion carries. Who did what?